my guest is not a ministerial designate, and of course it doesn't work in the presidency. But we'll just be looking at the antecedents of some of these individuals, their pedigrees, what do they have, and probably just have an overview of who they are and what we expect that they will be bringing on board as individuals to complement Mr. President at giving Nigeria that lift and that growth that we all hope will happen in days to come. Join me this morning as I welcome Mr. Tipo Oyewole on the program. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me
On the program
Good
today. Right, so like I said, we're just going to dance around these individuals,
yes,
look at who they speculative,
yes.
Look at who they are. For some of them who've served in certain capacities, what they've done, and just tap into what we think they might be bringing on board here. And so again, we probably will not just talk about states, talk about regions here, but just look at these individuals. Yes, time is short. We might just not also be able to capture all of them here, but at least significant faces, names that we also do know about. Let me start with the last man standing that cleared the hurdle at the Senate a few days ago, and that's Festus Keyamo,
yes.
who, of course, has been quite vocal before he even got a ministerial appointment at the last dispensation. A lawyer, one who's always been there in the face of the people, one who's always stood again for injustice and all of that. Of course, when he appeared days ago, some senators said, no, we will not clear you because you disrespected this house and all of that. So on that note, let's quickly start. I'm probably just going to bring Festus and Bosun Tijani together here based on the backlash that they've received because of their past should I say deeds or words or tweets and things like that that have come back to haunt them here. So Festus, of course, a lawyer, Bosun, an IT guru, who, of course, a young person who's done so well when it comes to building an institution for himself and his pedigree in the IT world. So for Festus, for you, when you saw the backlash at the Senate, what crossed your mind? Did you think, okay, here we go, will this guy be thrown away with the bathwater, or will something give way at the end of the day? So before we go to how it played out at the end of the day.
Okay, well, when I saw how the whole conversation with Festus played out, I chuckled because, I mean, like I said on another platform 2 days ago, I believe they just wanted him to eat the humble pie. Because remember, in the last administration, when he was a minister, there was some talk that they invited him, he didn't come, and then some clips came out that he did go, but I think he didn't dance to their tune per se.
Right.
So I believe that it was the position of most members of the Red Chamber to see how they can exert their authority, and also likely set a precedent to let people know either you're a nominee to be a minister, or you occupy any government office, to say that when people in the National Assembly call you, you do answer.
Right.
That we do have some influence, some leverage, and they're an important part of government. So you don't just say you disregard them, because in the past, I mean, we've had certain persons get invited over to the National Assembly and then they refuse to go. Some of them don't even bother to send anybody to represent them.
Right.
A few that go, they go out there and they believe that they didn't act accordingly or give them the respect that also had been accorded to them. So I believe that it was mostly for them to send a message, not just to Festus Keyamo, but to a lot of other people that may have any dealings whatsoever with them at the National Assembly.
Right. So in your opinion, do you think that this lesson is one that will be well taken across board here, whether it was Festus or other people that might have future engagement at the National Assembly, at the way that it's very important to accord some form of respect to the lawmakers, because whether you like it or not, they are an arm of government and they are there to do their jobs diligently. So when you need to compose yourself before these guys, has this sent the right signal out there?
Well, I believe that the signal has been sent to whom it may concern.
Okay.
But for anyone that's that has nothing to hide and is operating in good faith, I see no reason why you shouldn't show up there when they summon you to come, because in the end, either way you like it, I believe that, so in Nigeria, in most cases, before you get someone to the National Assembly, there most likely, if not always, a controversy around maybe your person or your office. So for me, I think it's a good opportunity to clear yourself and to clear your name.
Okay.
So why not just show up there, answer the questions, fulfill all righteousness, clear your name, clear your office, because in the end, where there is a lack of trust in your person and in the office you occupy, then you cannot be effective.
Right.
So I believe that that's one thing that people need to look at. They call you, go up there, clear yourself. This is something that we see happen in the House of Commons in the UK, in the Congress in the US. Go up there, have the conversation.
In fact, it's an opportunity for you to prove your mettle.
Yes, so it's an opportunity, and for a lot of people that they also don't know, it's, if you do know your stuff, it's a place for you to shine.
Right.
Because erstwhile, you may occupy the kind of office that isn't very forward-facing, where a lot of people get to engage you. You're not on television all the time. You're not on social media all the time. So it's an opportunity for you to go up there and shine and say that, you know what, this is what we do there. I know what I'm talking about. And then it boosts your reputation. For me, it's a win-win if you really know what you're doing. But unfortunately, what we see a lot of people do is to cower away from conversations like that, and I don't think it's very productive. Right.
So Festus is a lawyer, a son at that. During the last administration, 2 ministries he was moved to. His last ministry was as Minister of State for Labor. We didn't hear much about him. Also, while in that ministry, after he moved away from the Niger Delta. So for someone like that who's gone around 2 ministries in the last previous administration, how do you think his wealth of experience can be harnessed by this administration, as much as we do not know where he will be thrown this time round, whether as a senior minister or a junior minister, like they call them? But from his wealth of experience, how do you think, and as a vocal one at that, what does he have that will sell this administration?
Well, I believe that, I mean, if you ask Professor Seyamo today, I mean, yeah, it's not a secret that he's always wanted to be Minister for Justice.
Okay.
Yes. So yes, I mean, because of his background in law. And I mean, even with the Buhari administration, it was something that he really wanted. However, I would rather put him in NDDC if it was up to me.
Okay.
And this is why. For Minister of Justice, permit me to say, in my own opinion, I'm not sure Festus has a temperament for that office. For Minister of Justice, I'm not sure Festus has a temperament for it.
Okay.
I'd rather have him in NDDC. I know he'll do fantastically well at NDDC. Okay. But for Minister of Justice, I'd rather not take that gamble.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned temperament here. So these are some of the things that we really also need to look out for when you're putting people in position, because you must also know their capacities in terms of their temperament, in terms of their capacity to also be able to either overlook or, you know, just put things in right perspective. But do you think that is that one area that you think a lot of people in power really look out for?
Unfortunately, it isn't, because I mean, so I work in the private sector, and on occasion we do recruitment for clients, and either way you look at it, for certain positions, if not all, you also need to look at a person's temperament. I mean, I've conducted interviews before where an applicant comes in, they apply for a certain role, and based on the conversation we've had, we're like, I think you shine a lot better in this other role, even though you may not have any previous background in it. But I mean, there's barely any role out there that you can't learn on the job, except for maybe the medicals and all of that. But temperament is something that you need to take a close look at when you're putting somebody in any position. Doesn't matter if it's private sector or public sector. I'll give a good example. Okay, this might be a bit controversial. In the ministerial nominees, if you want to ignore temperaments, it's like saying you want to put somebody like former Governor Nyesom Wike as Minister for Labor.
Issues will never get resolved.
How do you think that's going to go? So yes, I mean, with your reaction, you saw what I'm saying. I mean, it's going to be very interesting. Let me leave it at that. I'd rather have somebody like Wike in works.
Yeah, I agree.
No nonsense person, and he also has a track record that he's not somebody contractors want to cross.
Right.
You don't want
just do your job and we'll
do your job.
Friends.
Wike is also somebody that will make sure you get paid.
Oh, sure.
He will also fight for you to get paid. So Do your job, you get paid, no qualms. He's not somebody you want his headache.
Right.
So in terms of temperament,
just do your thing and just go.
And go. So that's one thing that needs to come into consideration a lot.
Okay.
Aside from looking at people's backgrounds, what they've done so far, or what their experiences has been. So also look at the temperaments to see where they best fit. Because in the end, you also need to understand that being a minister is mostly an administrative role, and it means that you have a lot of people that you need to work with,
right,
both directly or indirectly. So you need to see how they can work with a lot of people around them. So it is important that we consider people's temperaments when we're trying to give them portfolios, either in the private sector
or in the public sector. Right. Oh, okay, so we've talked about Festus, of course, and Nyesom Wike crossing the conversation while that was coming in. And I share your thoughts or submission on Wike being in charge of works. If you look at what he's done in his states, then you will agree that infrastructure is one of the strongest points, and he actually has the eyes for finesse and of course when things should be done. And so, but then if you also look at his human relation, and of course his antecedent when it comes to relating to people who do not share his views, who do not share his opinions, and all of that. So do you think that him now being a ministerial nominee is able to bring all those be able to work even under pressure at the federal level to deliver on whichever ministry, just in case it doesn't get work, whichever ministry he'll be asked to man here?
Oh, yes, I believe that he's somebody that is very adaptable. If you look at how he's also been able to move and position himself in the last couple of years, he's very adaptable.
Okay.
He's somebody who is also open to compromise. He may not come off as such, okay, but he's somebody that is open to compromise. And this is what I've studied with. So I studied a lot of leaders, world leaders, globally and locally. A lot of people that you believe that aren't that approachable or maybe reasonable, that can be negotiated with, you just need to understand what their motivations are and know how to meet them in the middle.
Okay.
It's basic deal making, right? I mean, you meet somebody even in business, you need to understand what they want. So once, if you know what they want, how can you negotiate? So in the end, even being a minister still comes down to some level of negotiation.
Right.
And that's why I said, with this kind of person, putting him in works as opposed to labor is because his temperament is this. He's not somebody you want to antagonize perpetually.
Right.
You can't put him in a job like that. That's why you can't put him in labor.
Okay.
Because his automatic reflex will then be...
It will just give,
So his defensive strategy will be to attack. And labor, you need somebody who can negotiate on end, reach a resolution, go back and forth. I don't see that being wicked.
Okay.
Doesn't mean he's not somebody that you can negotiate with.
Right.
But it's not something that would literally be his job description.
Right.
You end up running into trouble.
Right.
I mean, you have 7 contractors he needs to have a conversation with. People he has to negotiate with. You negotiate the deal, okay, you said 2 billion, I'm not paying you 2 billion, I'll pay you 1.5. Oh, God, let's do 1.7, I'll give you 1.6. Okay, fine. Go and do it, I'll get you your deposits. Go and do it, I'll get you your money. That's the height of the conversation. Not something like labor, okay, we want 200,000, no, I'm giving you 100,000.
He's probably just going to say something and everyone
will everything will just go into definite strike. And but yes, he's somebody that I believe can deliver because he's very enthusiastic, he's very energetic, and I'm optimistic with seeing him in whatever portfolio they want to give him. Okay. I believe he'll perform.
You believe in Nyesom Wike. Let's go to Bosun Tijani.
Yes.
He's one individual, young guy there who's doing well, and of course, but because of some, I don't even know how to, some things that he has said or tweeted or X'd about Nigeria in the past. And this was somebody that, of course, he was only known on the Twitter space or on the X space for those who were following conversations there. And of course, when his name popped up, many said, isn't it this guy that had not said anything good about his country? And of course, he also did say that, well, he tweeted because of is it not X now? Whatever.
Let's go with Twitter.
He talked about those things because of his love for Nigeria and because he wanted, you know, something good for his country, and that was why he did some of those things. And so, is this also any lesson for young people when it comes to being reactive, when it comes to also decision making, and the facts that when you put something out there, it stays there, and it oftentimes is always very pretty difficult to retract, except of course if you're willing to stay through with what you believe in and then probably just shun all form of dealings with the government.
Yes, and so before I answer your core question, I would like to go back to the Boston bit of it. So one, I mean, everybody knows that he's done fantastically well in the startup space. We have to give him his flowers, okay?
Right.
No matter whatever misgivings some people may have with him, or whatever you may have considered as mistakes, he's somebody who has been at the frontier of seeing that a lot of young businesses get a lot of funding, and we have to give him credit for that.
Right.
And we also need to understand that he also bridged a gap as a private citizen that you would say governments in the past failed at, creating the enabling environments where people are able to easily get access to funding. And in terms of his frustration in that regard, or in that light, is something I can relate to. Now, a couple of years ago, been working on a certain project, still working on it. A couple of years ago, I tried to build something in the US, okay? Tried to get an R&D firm to help me build it in the US. Went online, got some contacts, sent cold emails, like 40 of them.
Wow.
I didn't get up to 7 responses. Unfortunately, my mistake that I got to realize from a friend who lives over there, that he corrected, because I complained to him, then he said, okay, send me a sample of the email. So I sent it to him. Because I proudly put in my signature my name, my title, my organization, my address, Lagos, Nigeria. He said, that Lagos, Nigeria first.
Was a put off already?
First, take it out.
Okay.
Then he helped me restructure it. Okay, this is how to... And then even from the 7 responses I got, there were some of them that already alluded to the fact that they thought I was trying to get funny.
Okay.
And what was in the body of the email? I'm trying to do this. This is what I'm trying to do. I need a quotation from you.
Okay.
Now, this doesn't require you to pay me.
To spend some, right, but...
I just need a quotation from you. I want to build
right.
something, and what is it going to cost me? In the event of I need to pay you or anything,
I just
maybe that's where we then talk about bank details. But I need to know, is this something you can even do? Because it's something that is very, very technical.
Okay.
And then some people sent some replies that were very funny. I won't lie to you, I was very frustrated.
Right.
So yes, as a young person in Nigeria trying to get something done, trying to build something, it could be very frustrating. Now, doesn't excuse the fact that you go on social media to blast your country and all of that. I didn't do that.
Right.
But for me, the lesson that I also shared on Twitter as well, I think the day of or the day after, is for the longest time, we had always told young people on social media that whatever you put out there stays out there. Today, people do not know that even in recruitment, we take a look at people's social media history. So you have the form that you fill, they will ask you. Sometimes, maybe if you don't fill it in the form, we'll ask you, what's the social media handle? We want to see the kind of person you are on social media. At embassies now, they do it.
Right.
At various organizations now abroad, they do it. If it involves some level of discretion, they check your social media. If it's something that requires security clearance, they check your social media to see if you're going to be a liability.
Right.
Not that, okay, they told me I was part of this briefing, and then you quickly go on Twitter. I was part of this high-level briefing. The president said,
what kind of a person are you?
You're not going to get the job.
Right.
So these are things that we have always told young people before now, and I hope that a lot of us learn this lesson, that the internet never forgets. Today, people say they delete tweets. There are people that can dig out anything. I don't know, maybe they don't have anything to do. But I mean, there are people on there, because I'm quite active on Twitter. There are people on there that if you need something in 10 minutes, they'll dig out your entire history and all. Oh, this person, you said this against this person. Why are you now claiming to be friends with the person? And the person didn't even realize there's something against them.
Right.
So these are things that we need to be very careful about. You are young now, you will not be young forever.
Sure.
Actions do have consequences. So we need to be very careful with what we put out there, because in the end, they're a reflection of ourselves. And one last thing about it, I need people to also go watch the clip of Boston's confirmation hearing.
Screening, right.
Screening, to see that even with all he had done, to be fair, in like 13 years, he had built a ton of businesses, helped a ton of businesses to grow. That was the topic of conversation.
Right.
And for him to be able to change their mind, it took being able to bring to fore what he had done, his credibility, both locally and internationally, that level of gravitas to be able to sway them. So the question is, you that you're putting something else out there, do you have a tenth
of what he's
of
done.
that to be able to balance out the skills?
Right.
One. Two, how many of you will have the opportunity to actually be in the same room as the people who are judging you for an opportunity, where you can explain yourself away to say that it was out of frustration, it was for this particular reason that you said this particular thing on social media.
Right.
Not a lot of people get that opportunity, because in some cases today, what we do now is, before you're even called for the interview, you are
already
screened.
checked about
so
you.
we've screened. So from there, we screened you off, and are like,
So
okay, you know
you
what?
do not even have an opportunity to
You don't get into the
speak
room
for
us to be asking you, okay, this particular account, and
Okay.
so those are the lessons that, for me, I believe a lot of us young people need to take away from that particular Boston episode of the whole matter.
Let's quickly talk about Mr. Strategy himself. That's what we knew him as in Lagos, Dele Alake. So, I mean, he's somebody, when you talk about communication, he's there. When you talk about and trying to break it down for people to really understand what is going on, he's there. For you, where do you see him? It's very... like
it's a no-brainer.
Enough.
Okay, are you going to take him to health? Are you going to take Dele Alake to health?
It's glaring enough. Like, okay.
This is a no-brainer.
This is your strength, so just stay there.
This is a no-brainer. Same way Boston Tijani's own will be science and tech or ICT or whatever they will
information.
They'll call that ministry.
But what are some of the mistakes that you would like for the likes of Dele Alake to take into cognizance when it comes to communication and communicating effectively with Nigerians? Because again, sometimes it is your forte and you take certain things for granted.
Yes.
So what are some of the things that Nigerians would like to see being done differently in that ministry?
Most importantly, right, especially for that particular ministry, it's carrying on a lot of roles, and I'll explain why it carries on a lot of roles. Now, part of what the Ministry of Information does, for me, I believe the National Orientation Agency to be doing a part of it. Now, I spoke about those guys during the elections. I will come back to them later.
Okay.
Either under this current administration, they are dissolved entirely, or the entire place is restructured.
Okay.
Because up until now, I have not seen any tangible thing that has come out from that agency.
Okay.
That aside, the Ministry of Information should understand that for good or bad, they are, for us, not just the mouthpiece of the presidency. They should also be the ears of the presidency.
Okay.
Being the ears of the presidency means that what we are saying from this
Should
end,
go back to...
you hear it,
Right.
distill it, understand what people are feeling in their bones, communicate it with the presidency, and then see how you can merge both perspectives. Because you are the only person that should have the perspective. We don't know what's going on in the presidency.
Right.
You do. It's also your responsibility to also know what is going on the ground.
Right.
To also communicate with the presidency. But unfortunately, what we've seen before now is people in that particular office or in that particular ministry always see themselves as the mouthpiece of the presidency. So the communication is always one-sided. So that's why we always felt like they were talking at us.
Okay.
They were talking down at us. So there wasn't any synergy whatsoever. So now I would like to see that they address that particular dynamic of communication so that the communication can be effective.
Okay.
Now, so far in this administration, it has proven to be one that listens, because certain things that they had said they wanted to roll out, people kicked against it, and then they rolled it back and said, okay, you know what, we'll go back to the drawing board to see what we can do better with it, even if we're going to go ahead with it at all, or we'll do something else differently.
Okay.
So it is important that effective communication be adopted in its administration.
Very, very quickly before we leave that ministry, do you think that culture should be taken away from that ministry? Because
Yes.
now we have information and culture.
What's the culture bit with it?
Okay.
Let's take out culture, put somebody else in charge. It should be culture and tourism.
Okay.
Not information and culture. What
Okay.
does the culture and information have to do together?
Right.
Take out culture from it. Let's be culture and tourism. That's
Okay.
literally the synergy that has to be there.
Right.
And then that person is in charge of seeing how we can develop and build our tourist attractions. We have so many beautiful places that people can go to in Nigeria. It will drive a lot of revenue for us if we can get a lot of foreigners to come check those places out. So yes, tourism and culture should be together. Information should stand alone, because the responsibility is very, very huge, especially at a time like this where the whole policy is polarized. A lot of people are complaining with a lot of things, legitimately or illegitimately. So they need to be at the top of their game at every single time, see how they can communicate with Nigerians effectively, and let us know the heart of the presidency with regards to their intention to see how they can grow the lives of Nigerians.
Time is fast spent. We have just about 2 minutes to wrap up this conversation. But as we wrap up, yes, I knew that we're not going to be able to take all of those ministers and the nominees. But as we wrap up, this administration has 9 ex-governors as ministerial nominees. For you, what does this represent? Is it a good omen, or one that in years to come should be looked into somehow?
Personally, right now, I'm probably indifferent. This
Okay.
is why, because before now, we all know that the retirement home for governors has always been the Senate. Okay, so now we're saying come on board as ministers. For me, it makes sense from an administrative perspective.
Okay.
Because primarily, like I said before, your role as a minister is an administrative one. Now, you were the governor of a particular state for a particular duration. All your job revolved around an administrative one. So how about you bring that experience to the fore, and let's see what you can do with it. So for me, it's a welcome development. The number may be too much. Okay, but I believe that it's also good to have a mix of them in there to see what they can also bring to the table, because I would expect that even as governors, there were certain things they saw from that perspective that they couldn't address because they didn't have any authority at the federal level. Now you have the authority at the federal level. What are you doing about it? Even if it's not your ministry, these people are now your colleagues. You can say, oh, take a look at this particular thing. I noticed it as a governor. Colleague, take a look at this particular thing. I saw this particular challenge. So I believe that that should be their own role, and I believe that it should be held to very serious levels of accountability, because they cannot claim to not know what the people are feeling, because what was your job then as a governor?
Right.
So you should go there and also form a dual role of an advocate for the people, because you understand. It's expected that you understand or understood the plight of the people.
In 30 seconds, if you were to take the number of women as special advisors and ministerial nominees, are you happy with the numbers?
I believe it could have been better. But for me, honestly, it's mostly competence over anything else. Doesn't mean there are more competent women, but then again, it still comes down to trade-offs, political negotiations, alliances, and all of that. Not to sound away, but unfortunately, how many women are in those rooms to make those deals, to form those alliances, those relationships? Doesn't mean there aren't barriers put in front of them. Those exist. Those are wider conversations. But I believe that things are getting better, and they can get better. All
right. But I have to leave the conversation here this morning. Thank you so much, Dikko Yewale, for coming on the program today. I know you were running away from this conversation.
Yes, I was.
But I'm sure that it hasn't been too much of a problem. We didn't put you in much of a hot seat. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
All right, that's the much time will permit us to take on the program today. Just like we said at the beginning, we're only being speculative this morning and not being authoritative.